Before we start today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. The content in this podcast is for general reference and educational purposes only. It is not meant to be complete or exhaustive or to be applicable to any specific individual's medical condition. No information provided in this podcast constitutes medical advice and is not an attempt to practice medicine or to provide specific medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. This podcast does not create a physician-patient relationship and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please do not rely on this podcast for emergency medical treatment. Remember that everyone is different, so make sure you consult your own healthcare professional before seeking any new treatment and before you alter, suspend, or initiate a new change in your routine. Welcome to The Starting Gate. We're your hosts, Dr. Kitty Dotson
and Dr. Sarah Sheets,
two internal medicine doctors who spent years practicing traditional primary care. Over time, we realized something was missing from modern healthcare. A real understanding of how everyday lifestyle choices impact overall health.
We'll help you cut through the noise of the countless health influencers and their conflicting opinions, because no matter who you follow, the basics of lifestyle medicine are at the heart of it all.
Welcome back to The Starting Gate. We're your hosts, Dr. Kitty Dotson
and Dr. Sarah Sheets.
So for those of you in Kentucky, we hope you're staying nice and warm in this snow, and hopefully you listened to last week's episode with Beth Cronenberg. She really gave a lot of great actionable advice, and we also announced our first weekly habit challenge. So we are in the midst of a 12-week habit challenge with the Starting Gate podcast, and last week was our first one, which was no alcohol. So hopefully you were able to try that and kind of reassess your relationship with alcohol. It may have been a little extra hard if you were snowed in, or particularly if you are a parent and your kids have still not gone back to school. But if you didn't get a chance to try it, go ahead and try it at some point in the coming weeks. And if you like these weekly habit challenges, head on over to thebetterhealthlibrary.com and go ahead and sign up for our free newsletter. We'll send you the weekly habit challenge and some reasons why we think it's important to try for your health. So today we're going to switch our focus back from nutrition to fitness, and we're super excited for our guest today, Dustin Jones. We're going to talk about how to set goals, how to make exercise sustainable through all ages, no matter what age you are. And we're going to discuss how to get back into exercise if it's been months or even if it's been decades since your last workout.
And we're very excited to welcome our guest today, Dustin Jones, who's the owner of Stronger Life Gym. Dustin and Jeff Musgrave, who are co-owners, both have their doctorate in physical therapy and are committed to active aging.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation. So I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I went to University of Kentucky, and at the time I was really big into sports, like sports PT, wanted to work with athletes. And then I got out into the real world, had my first job, and I worked with a lot of older adults, and I would apply some of those like sports, those strength and conditioning principles to this population, and found that they responded really, really well, very dramatically in a relatively short period of time. And that really got me interested in mainly working with older adults and specializing in the term geriatrics, right? So I also quickly learned that our training doesn't necessarily prepare us to work with this population, so started to learn more, started a podcast so I could talk to folks and learn more. And then I ended up in continuing education, teaching other physical therapists how to work with older adults. And through that whole journey of in my practice and teaching other clinicians, like there's a consistent thread of we work with folks in the context of physical therapy, and there comes a point where we are likely going to have to discharge. But these people still need fitness. They still need to get stronger. They still need exercise. And there wasn't a lot of places that could offer this and handle the complexity that can come with different diagnoses or surgeries or injuries. And that was really frustrating. And so I decided, you know what, I want to focus on this issue and create an inclusive, supportive community only for folks over 55 here in Lexington, where anyone, regardless of their ability, can come and change their life. And so that kind of led me and then my partner, Jeff Musgrave, to Stronger Life, the gym for 55 plus here in Lexington.
That's amazing. We love that message.
Yes, we do. We wanted to ask you first, what are the common misconceptions that you see people come in with about aging and maybe the physical limitations that may come with age?
Yeah, there's a good bit. I think one of the most impactful ones is what has been told to people, particularly a lot of times from the medical system, not just physicians, right, but all kinds of different healthcare providers of you have this particular diagnosis, therefore you need to not do X, Y, and Z, or you have this surgery and you should not lift over some arbitrary amount of weight that I'm going to say that doesn't really have any research to support it. And so we get a lot of folks that have perceptions of themselves that don't necessarily match up with reality. And most of our work is honestly showing people what they're already capable of doing, but they often perceive that they're more weak or fragile or slow than what they actually are. And we do a lot of work to overcome some of those misconceptions. So that's a long-winded answer, but I think that's the biggest one that folks that come into our gym that we see.
Mm-hmm. What about folks that are feeling fear about becoming more active? Do you have any specific advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the fears on board. It may have been from something that was told to them, or they have had like a rough past, injuries, have, some pretty complicated surgeries. And I think it's helpful for folks to know that physical activity and exercise, is one of the best things that we can do. It is good for you. The tricky part is finding the exercise routine. Hopefully it's a routine that is going to be right for you and your particular issues or limitations. And that's where like a blanket approach of you should do this particular exercise or regimen without being able to tailor it to that person's situation. I think that's where people can, I wouldn't say get into trouble, but may not be as successful, right? It's like how we see this at Stronger Life is we'll have folks with, knee replacements, hip replacements, lumbar fusions, have, heart disease, diabetes, a whole host of all kinds of different things. And they all present with different limitations. Like they may have a tighter knee on the right than the left, or back pain when they get in a particular situation or position. And we tailor our activities to what they're presenting. So we may provide modifications for something that we're doing that day so they can still work, they can still exercise, but it's within the confines of what they're able to do. And so matching the intervention or the exercise to their ability. That's where, working with a professional can be very, very helpful in those scenarios.
And now that you have focused on this age group of the 55 plus, what are some of the biggest observations that you've made that their fitness needs have changed compared to what it would have been in their 30s or 40s?
One of the biggest variables that will decline the quickest if we don't train it is power. So my ability to produce force quickly. We will lose our power faster than we lose our strength over time. And if we don't train in quick manners, then we lose it very, very quickly. And so a big emphasis towards very quick, explosive, powerful movements, agility drills where we're shifting our weight very quickly. So these quick movements are really, really helpful and potent for folks over 55. But when I probably explained some of these exercises, they were probably the last person that came to mind, right? Like you're probably thinking athlete, younger.
Absolutely. I was like, wait now.
Right. So we typically associate it with like a younger demographic, and they're good for athletes, but they're also good for grandma and grandpa. Like, and grandma and grandpa are probably going to benefit more from the percentage standpoint than the younger individual. And so those interventions that we often associate with younger folks are often the best for older adults. The quick, explosive movements are very, very potent.
Yeah, I've seen some research about the quick movement, and I really wasn't sure exactly what did that mean, the quick power, having power fast. So I guess you're saying being able to like quickly change direction or lift something fast as opposed to like a slow dumbbell curl. Is that kind of the difference?
Correct. Like let's say I'm trying to work on my ability to get out of a chair. So that movement is basically what we'd call a squat. And so it is very beneficial for all of us to squat with heavy weight, like very heavy weight that gets us strong. It's good for our bone mineral density. There's lots of benefits. The stronger we get, then the easier it's going to be to get up out of the chair. But if I also train that movement, maybe with a little weight, but where I'm exploding up out of my chair as quickly as possible, and then coming down, then coming back up as quickly as possible, that is a very potent stimulus that a lot of people do not get, and they respond to very well. it improves their ability to produce force quickly, and it's very practical, especially if I lose my balance, for example. Like if I lose my balance, usually the first thing I'm going to do is do like what we call a stepping strategy, where I take a step to try and maintain my balance. Well, that's a very quick movement. I need to be strong, but I need to be able to produce that force quickly. And so the training, kind of those power-based, those quick movements can often correlate to someone having a reduced risk of a fall because they're able to correct their balance a little bit easier than others.
Balance is something that's always on the mind of many older people, is because they have that fear of falling. What is it in training that should be different in your 60, 70 years of life that you can help with your balance and actually improve it?
Yeah, and balance is so complex, right? Like there's so many systems that are coming together to give information so we can maintain our stability and balance on our feet. There's certain folks that are going to have a particular deficit in one of those areas than others. So I do think a tailored approach to balance training is very helpful. But by and large, what we find at our gym is training some of the different scenarios and exposing people to the different scenarios where they may have a fall and making them used to those scenarios in the gym. So when they're out in the real world, they're going to perform a little better. So what that could look like is a lot of people can have a fall when it's dark in the middle of the night. They're going to use the bathroom. It may not be well lit, right? So we will do exercises with our eyes closed. And that asks more of some of the different systems that we use for balance, and it makes it pretty challenging. But the more we do that, the better those people are going to perform when it is dark, when there is a low light scenario. We will also do exercises where we are changing the direction of our head. We're moving our head and we're stimulating our inner ear vestibular system. And that can be very helpful for folks because when folks are walking, like grocery stores is a classic example. I love to watch people at grocery stores because if their inner ear vestibular system's working pretty well, they can walk straight and then they can be looking left and right on the grocery aisle and be able to maintain kind of their gait speed and walking straight ahead. But folks that may have some issues in their inner ear, if they have to look to the right or left, they stop and then they turn versus being able to walk and glance. And so we can train that. So we can train people doing different activities and then adding in head turns with that. And so we do that in the gym, and it's going to make it easier out in the real world. Another one is reaction. So being able to react to when you do lose your balance and practicing that stepping strategy that I mentioned. And you can do that through, we like to use tidal tanks, which is this like plastic tube that you fill with water and you move it around. There's all kinds of different activities that you can do, but that water starts splashing around and knocks you off balance. And you have to maintain it. Oftentimes you have to do that stepping strategy, and so you can practice those things. And
I think I saw the UK basketball players warming up with those at the basketball game. And I was like, what is that? It must be something for core strength. Or...
Right, core
strength. How cool.
It definitely works your core. I just came from class and we had them, and it definitely does, but it's what we'd call a perturbation. And so you're having to react to that perturbation, and it's going to make you more stable. So you'll see a baseball. It's become real popular in baseball as well, that piece of equipment. But like those are some of the elements that are going to help your balance. Most people, when they hear balance training, they think, all right, I'm going to stand on one leg, right? Like while I'm warming up my coffee or brushing my teeth, right? Which that's not bad, but you're really missing the boat in terms of the different variables of balance that we need to practice and train.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And we know that doing balance training at least 3 days a week has been shown to decrease falls by 37% and then also decrease the chance of you having a fracture when you fall, and that's 61%. And that is a huge decrease in that.
I just want to throw out a couple of facts that Kitty and I both really like to share and just get your real life take on these, what you see with people in your gym. So one big fact is muscle mass decreases 4% per decade after 30, and then this increases to 7% after the age of 75. What do you experience with your clients and their loss of muscle mass as they age?
I've definitely observed that, and resistance training can obviously counter that, which is one of the many reasons why higher intensity resistance training is absolutely crucial for humans, but definitely folks over 65. But one kind of theme that I often see is that folks will hear that stat or realize it and they know I need to get stronger, but they often are not fueling themselves enough with that strength training to see some changes in their muscle mass. And so we have a lot of folks that are under eating, that are not getting enough protein, for example. And it's kind of counterintuitive because a lot of folks are coming to us for various reasons. You typically don't hear a lot of folks saying you need to eat more. And we're often saying that of like, make sure, you get your protein in. Are you getting your, the recommended amount, which varies tremendously. But for our active individuals, we're recommending 1 gram per pound of body weight per day, which is a little bit on the high end. But for these folks that are working out with us, 5 days a week to really supplement that resistance training, like that's what's going to, make a change in some of those muscle mass numbers.
Great advice. It does require, if you are wanting to work on either maintaining or increasing your muscle mass, it does require good nutrition as well. So the lifestyle medicine doctors over here are smiling as you're giving this information.
Yeah, and I'd love your take on that recommendation for active individuals, 1 gram per pound of body weight. What's your take on that?
That one's a little bit higher than I usually am doing the 1.3 to 1.5 gram per kilogram for active individuals, especially to start, because sometimes going even higher to begin with gets people unmotivated to do it at all because it's so overwhelming.
It's difficult, yeah.
To increase your protein intake that dramatically, as well as when you shoot for those really high protein goals. A lot of times you have difficulty in also learning how to incorporate some of your fruits and vegetables and getting enough fiber. So a common issue that I see is with a high increase in protein intake that happens all of a sudden, then you're going to deal with constipation as well as a lot of gut issues at the same time. So I tend to like to do more of a gradual approach up. And then I have the luxury of having a body composition machine. So I'm able to do some of that monitoring of muscle mass and see if we can find that sweet spot and where they may actually need to be.
Yeah. I like that.
I think just the other thing to think about in the older population is if you do have chronic kidney disease, which is more common in this age group, you may have been given a recommendation not to exceed certain protein limits. So if you're in that age group and you have a kidney specialist or your doctor has told you have chronic kidney disease, make sure that you don't have some sort of threshold that you shouldn't be exceeding for protein. Otherwise, I think increasing that to those higher levels has some definite benefits. Another thing that we were looking at was we just talked about muscle mass decreasing, but actually that strength decreases 2 to 5 times as quickly as muscle mass goes down, and that's linked more closely with disability and death.
Yeah, and I think with the folks that we work with, resistance training is relatively new to them or they haven't done it before. We have a lot of active individuals that mainly walk or swim or do more aerobic activity, and they start to notice things start to get a little harder. Their strength goes down. So we definitely emphasize that for the strength benefits, but also bone mineral density. We can really influence some of those numbers with consistent higher intensity resistance training, amongst a couple other things over a longer period of time. But the resistance training is huge. And the conversations I usually have with folks are more around independence in the sense of the stronger you are, the easier life becomes. It's easier to get out of the chair. It's easier to get up and down from the stairs. It's easier to keep up with the grandkid. It's easier to carry your groceries from your car, into your house. The stronger you get, that means the longer you're going to be independent and you won't need help with X, Y, and Z. And so I think that's a big thing that people need to grasp beyond all the health benefits, because they're tremendous and I think convincing enough, but it's just going to make your life easier. The stronger you are, the easier your life's going to become.
Yeah. And so for our younger listeners, just thinking about starting now, wherever you are, no matter what age, the more you can build now, the better off you're going to be when you're trying to maintain this after 55.
Right. You're going to have more in the bank account, right? So when you do, we're all going to start to see those losses, but we're going to have a little bit more to lose, which we've got more margin and we're going to be, in a better spot.
So in thinking about getting started in exercise, especially with resistance training, I can see how there would be a lot of fear of hurting yourself, especially because as you get older, it does take longer to recover. So for people that are entering into resistance training, is there a particular way you recommend that, like thinking bands versus using a machine or barbells or dumbbells? Is there one that seems to be the safest route if you're entering this as a beginner?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I don't want to give preference like one piece of equipment or not. I think the end goal, and this is what we're striving for, not what we're going to start, is that we're doing high intensity resistance training. And so
can you pause and define that?
Yeah, so high intensity it's going to be, let's say if like 0 means you're laying on the couch and 10 is the hardest thing you've ever done. When you do an exercise, that means it would be like a 7 or 8 out of 10 if we're going to use that scale. You could be very calculated with it and make it very complicated, but we'll stick to that scale. So like you get done, let's say with like 5 to 10 reps of a particular exercise, and you think, how hard was that on a scale of 0 to 10? If it was around a 7 or 8, that means it was a high intensity. That's kind of the destination. That's where we want to get to. But when we're entering, that should not be the expectation. And so how we'll deal with this is I just want you moving. I don't care if you have weight or not. I just want to get you moving. And we're going to learn some of these different exercises and movements that are going to have a lot of carryover into your everyday life, like the squat, like I mentioned. A deadlift is another one. It's where we're picking dead weight up off the ground or no weight, right, in this instance. So these kind of total body functional movements that we're focusing more on the technique of how you're doing it and not necessarily concerned about the weight and the quote-unquote intensity. And as you get more comfortable and as you get more used to these movements, then we can start to ramp up the weight or how heavy. So we can use bands for a lot of these. And so then we can add a little bit more band resistance. Some of these movements can be mimicked on machines, and then we can gradually build up the weight. Barbells, obviously, dumbbells, kettlebells, those types of things. So the goal is that we get to high intensity resistance training for all the benefits that we've discussed, but no one's going to start there. You should not. And if you do start there, like you're going to be sore for days, especially if you haven't exercised. It's not going to be a great experience. So it's kind of an on-ramp or a journey to get to that point. And for some, it's a week. Others, it's months, right? And that's where there's a lot of individuality to that. But that's where, you do a session and see how you respond. And then you go from there. If you feel really sore, you have muscle soreness in the particular areas, and maybe dial it back a little bit for this next session. But if you do a session and you feel like, all right, that was pretty good, I feel great. Okay, well, let's make it a little more challenging. So it's definitely an on-ramp and a journey to get to that higher intensity.
I would love to hear your take on giving some tips on how to make fitness goals that are attainable and tailored to this specific population.
I guess a couple things that I think about in the conversations I've had with folks. So one is the prominence of exercise in our lives. I think we really need to have an accurate understanding of how important it is. Like, you all may have heard the concepts of like big rocks and little rocks, right? Like when you're like setting your schedule, like you've got these kind of non-negotiables, like I'm going to eat dinner with my family every night, and I'm not going to schedule anything that's going to conflict with that, or do a podcast interview or see a patient or whatever it may be. And I know we're all going to be different, but like exercise, I mean, the evidence is so clear. That is a non-negotiable if you want to live a long, healthy, independent life. We schedule around it. I mean, it is just like brushing our teeth. It is what we do. It is a part of our identity. And the quicker that we can embrace that, the better off we're going to be. It's a non-negotiable, even if life gets crazy. And I feel this on a day-to-day basis, but I hold on tight to that time. But coupled with that, it is very easy to think if I don't do all the things or 45, 60 minutes or whatever program I may be following, if I don't do the whole thing, then what's the point, right? And so it's very easy to think you have to have such a huge amount of time to dedicate to that discipline. And I think that's just absolute garbage. Like,
Preach.
You give me 1 minute, right? And we'll get her done, and it's going to be beneficial. And I build onto that habit, and I tell myself that this is a priority, and that will just continue to compound. We're going to have good days. We're going to have bad days. There's going to be seasons where it's going to be very difficult to dedicate 30, 45, 60 minutes to exercise. So even 1 minute, do 1 minute of all-out burpees and try and tell me you're not completely out of breath, right? Or, sit to stands or squats or whatever it may be. So I think elevating the priority of exercise, it's a non-negotiable, but then not putting these unrealistic standards that we're all going to be working out an hour every single day. Like that's just not realistic for a lot of folks. Even 1 minute of some all-out effort is going to be really helpful.
Yeah, and that's true at any age.
Yeah,
for sure.
For sure.
So aside from time constraints, what are other setbacks you see or roadblocks you see people encounter when they're trying to meet these goals, but they're struggling to be consistent?
Pain can be like a flare-up of an old injury, or maybe a new like ache or pain. It can be a barrier for individuals. And when we take up an exercise routine, regardless of what it is, there's inherent risk in moving our body at a higher intensity. We should have the expectation that as I continue to push myself to my limits, which that is where we see a lot of benefit, I may have a sore knee or a sore shoulder, a little flare-up, right? And to be able to put that in context in kind of the grand scheme of things. Like if I will have, let's say every year I have like a flare up in low back pain as I'm performing high intensity activity, but I am performing high intensity activity on a consistent basis, I will take the annual bout of low back pain over deconditioning and the whole host of chronic disease that could potentially happen. So I'm not saying like you should get hurt, but don't be surprised when you start to do really hard things and push these limits and get all these amazing benefits. You may have a little musculoskeletal flare up, and that's okay. But that is not a reason to stop exercising. That is a reason to modify your exercise, to work around it. And so we'll have folks, let's say they've had a knee replacement like 5 years ago. They go on a hike and they go for a much longer distance than what they're typically used to. And then they come back and their knee's sore and swollen. Okay, awesome. You come to the gym. We're going to be able to modify so we don't put more stress through that knee, but all of your other body parts, your cardiovascular system, everything else about your body is going to benefit, but we're going to protect that area. So we kind of view the barrier or the bump in the road of an injury or flare up as just an obstacle that we work around. And so when you have that flare up, when you have that ache or pain, continue, like keep going to the gym. Don't stop. Just work around it and be able to modify. And that's where a skilled coach can be really helpful.
I think that's great because there's so many times in primary care I would see someone have one injury occur and that injury then led to something else start to hurt and then something else would start to hurt because you're not moving and you sit still and everything starts to compound. So I think that's a really good take on that.
But I think like we have some of those little flare-ups and it's easy to focus solely on that and almost forget all the other benefits that we're getting from partaking in that program, like the added years of life and the compression of morbidity and the improvements in strength and all of these things. When you like weigh it out, I'll take a little flare up and some knee pain for that. Like that's a pretty good ROI, you know? So yeah, a lot of people will be like, oh, I need to stop when, you know, I've had that flare up. I'm like, no, like you continue on, we can modify it to work around it and that area will recover and then you'll keep rolling.
And I've always been a big proponent for physical therapy. I think sometimes people only think about seeing a physical therapist when they have had a surgery and they're trying to recover from that or had those major injuries, but not thinking about, hey, a physical therapist may help me figure out what's weak and how to strengthen something so I don't have this chronic injuries continuing to occur over and over again. I think some of that is our perception of how to use a physical therapist is a little bit skewed, and we need to learn how to lean into them more so we're able to stay active.
Yeah. Speaking of that, do you have any recommendations for people that are thinking that, let's say, someone's out there that has exercised off and on over the years, they do tend to find themselves having pain in one place or the other, and then they end up quitting. Is there a particular type of physical therapist or a particular thing they should search when they're looking for, who could I go see to just help me get started on this again and maybe take me down a better path?
Yeah. So I have a lot of bias in this answer. I teach continuing education for a company called Institute of Clinical Excellence, so ICE. And I know this happens in your all's world as well, but like you go to one physical therapist and you go to the other and they could say exact opposite things, right? Like you'll have some folks that are going to be all about exercise and you go to the next one and they're just going to want to do manipulations and soft tissue and just put needles in folks, right? Like you've got such variability in physical therapists. And so you could say it's for every healthcare provider, but like if you are seeking to be active and you are wanting to get stronger, you're wanting to partake in an exercise regimen, your provider should be doing the thing that you want to do. Like they should be practicing what they preach. They should understand what it's like to lift at 80-85% of a 1RM. Actually be able to do the things that you're wanting to do. And you could easily go to someone that says, oh, well, your knee hurts while you run. Well, just stop running, right? Like you could easily hear that, but like, no, like you want a professional that's going to be able to work with you, that's going to allow you to keep running or run in a manner that you're not going to have any pain, right? And so that's who we train. Like it's a tenet, if you are ICE trained is what we call it, is you have to be about it. And so I would say go to ptonice.com and we have a directory of folks that have taken those classes, and they are a special breed of physical therapists that practice what they preach.
Can you say that website one more time?
ptonice.com.
We'll put a link to that in our show notes too.
Yeah, and then there's a find an ICE trained clinician, and they're all over the country.
In your gym, what have you found that has been most successful for clients to track their progress and celebrate those wins? I really find that is huge in keeping people motivated and going.
We celebrate consistency, just like the fact that you've come for a certain number of classes. That doesn't work for everyone, but we really prioritize that. There's a lot of different metrics that you could do, like when we're talking about resistance training, of how much like weight you're lifting, or let's say if it's a certain poundage, like if you have a 35-pound kettlebell, for example, like how many times can you lift that off the ground, aka a deadlift? And then you could retest that after a month, 2 months, 3 months, and you'll probably add several reps. So in terms of some of those strength metrics, you can see a lot of progress. We have a lot of folks also that they wear their Apple Watch, and that's provide a lot of really interesting data in terms of resting heart rate improving, their walking heart rate improving, their heart rate variability improving, sleep quality goes up, their physical activity, a lot of them goes up, just more steps in the day. In our context, in a group setting, it can be a little more challenging to track variables versus like when I was working one-on-one with folk. I would be testing some of these things on basically a biweekly, monthly basis. Yeah, consistency is huge. How much folks are lifting, how many reps they can do of a certain weight, and then some of the data that you can get from wearables has been pretty motivating for folks.
You just mentioned that you all focus on group classes, and I think that your gym has something special in the fact that it really emphasizes social connection. Mm-hmm. Can you give us a little bit of why you try to foster that and what you've seen for your clients?
Yeah, it's not for everyone, right? Like working out with other people, it can be intimidating. So I definitely want to acknowledge that a lot of people walk into that like, I don't know if I want to work out with all these people. Like we do offer personal training, but we emphasize the group setting because it influences people in such a dramatic manner. When, like I mentioned before, when a lot of people come into our doors with a lot of fear on board, with different surgeries, with different conditions, and they're very concerned about taking up a program and making sure it's safe, they don't want to get hurt. And when they're able to execute and do a class with people like them that have the same surgeries, had the same injuries, that look like them as well, are in the same life situation or phase, we all collectively get better. We prove to everyone in that room that we can do this. We can push ourselves. We can improve regardless of our date of birth. And it's very infectious. And so we see a lot of people come in with a lot of timidness, a lot of fear on board. And then after a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, they're like a whole different person. And we've unleashed the beast at that point. And it just like seeps through the whole community. And the technical term I think would be a positive age stereotype. Like our perceptions of aging change to more positive, and we can see the good and the opportunity in aging versus it's just death, decline, and deterioration, which is a negative age stereotype. So yeah, that's very infectious, and we feel like that's kind of the special sauce for our group classes.
Yeah, especially now we have the Harvard study, and we know that social connectedness and having that is really the most important thing we see for longevity. Mm-hmm. It gives you a way to combine that with doing physical activity at the same time.
Yeah, friends save lives, and when you mix in some fitness, that just maximizes that, I think.
Well, speaking of that, can you give us any, without naming any names, any examples or success stories you've seen of people that have come in with a fear or an injury or just a limitation and how they've progressed through that and where they are?
Oh, man. Yeah. My favorite one. So Carolyn, I won't give her last name. So Carolyn, she's 90 now. She came to me when she was 87. She had osteoporosis. I said had. Scoliosis as well. So her spine curves, and it's pretty noticeable, when you're just looking at her. And so she was concerned about getting weaker in her bone mineral density. And so she knew she wanted to lift some weights. And she's never lifted weights before, but she was an avid walker and a very healthy, active individual. And so we start to do some resistance training, and I'm gradually progressing, and she's just responding really well. And then she really falls in love with the group class once she gets in there. And so this goes on for about a year. She gets her DEXA scan, and she went from being osteoporotic to osteopenic. So she improved kind of the range of her DEXA scan in her lumbar spine. So a big improvement there. But then now she walks in and she's got 15, 20 friends. She has a packed social calendar. She has like this whole new group of people that she's hanging out with. So that right there alone is like, oh my gosh, this woman has changed her life. But it gets better. I like running, and I wanted to see what these folks could do if they started to run. So there's a 5K. And I was like, hey, who wants to do a 5K this year? This is like 3 months away. And we had about 20 folks like, yeah, I've never ran before, but let's do this 5K. So we have a run club, and Carolyn signs up for this run club. Carolyn is actually very fast. And we're doing like running drills and sprints, and we're prepping for this 5K. And Carolyn does this. She runs a 5K, and she ran the whole thing. At the time, she was 88. I was like, Carolyn, I think you could be one of the best distance runners in the country in your age group. And she's like, whatever, Dustin. I'm like, I'm serious. Do you want to try and compete in the senior games? And she's like, why not? So we go to the Kentucky senior games. She does the 5K. She qualifies for the national senior games. We go to Pittsburgh, and she gets third place in the 5K at 89 years old. Never ran before we did this like little run club. Her whole family from all across the country. I mean, there was about 20 folks that like flew in for this. It was in Pittsburgh. And she got third place in the 5K. And her whole family was just like, what have you done to our grandmother? Like, it wasn't me. I mean, I guess provide some of the opportunities, but she's a competitive runner now. And yeah, so Carolyn, she kind of reversed her osteoporosis and took up competitive running at a national level. So,
okay,
yeah.
That was extreme. Wait,
yes.
that's a good story.
Yeah, that was a better example than I was expecting.
I've got some more relatable ones for sure, but like hers, and if you met her, you would never even imagine it. It's awesome.
Have you seen it really impact someone's maybe mental health or, aside from just physical strength, and have you seen it impact people in other ways?
Oh my gosh, yes. When people are able to truly see what they're capable of doing, right? Like they come in, they perceive themselves to be weak, to be fragile, like, oh, I'm so close to having an injury. And then they start to see, wait, I am strong, I'm resilient, I can do these things. That flips a switch to people's perception of what they can and can't do that impacts everything outside the gym. And so the confidence to take up the hobby that they've been putting off for years, or to pick back up the hobby that they said they used to do, or the courage to take that trip that, oh, okay, I can handle those cobblestone steps in Italy. I'm going to do that. We got so many examples, and we'll coordinate social activities to give people opportunities to do this. Like we're taking 20 folks to the Dominican Republic in February for an adventure retreat. And like half the people have never been out of the country. And they're going to go to this resort. And so it really creates these, I would say, adventurous folks that are willing to try different things, new hobbies, or do things that they've been thinking about for a long time. And it really stems from what they did like inside those four walls. I didn't necessarily expect that impact, right? Like our main focus is like we're going to get people fitter, stronger, help them live longer, maintain their independence, yada, yada, yada. But I think one of the coolest things is that mental side, mental health, but then also the confidence in what they can handle.
Do you have any suggestions? Let's say someone's listening and they have a parent or someone else in their life that is already showing some physical decline, maybe can't get up the bleachers to their kid's baseball game, but that person does not seem to have any interest in trying to improve their strength or exercising or anything, do you have any suggestions for how someone can help persuade someone in their life to get into this more?
That's challenging every way around it, because we've had a lot of kids that, for example, like, hey, mom, dad, I bought you this gift card at this gym. You need to go, right? That never ends well. Like, you got to have a very, I think, special relationship with your family members to pull that one off. But I think, like, selling, like, if the physical benefits aren't landing, I think seeing what these people are doing, the lives they're leading, the smiles, the kind of that more social side, and they're having fun doing it, that convinces more people to come in, I think, than the physical benefits. And usually we portray that like on social media, like when they see the pictures of our members that are having fun, going bowling, hiking, going to the Dominican Republic or whatever. We'll highlight how the training has made their life better. People will often see that and be like, okay, I want that, versus like if we try and sell strength and sell fitness, right? Like that, for a lot of people, they're not necessarily going to buy that or be convinced by that.
And that leads us into one of the other topics we wanted to talk about with you, and that is about the impact physical activity can have on your cognition and decreasing that risk of dementia or Alzheimer's in general, because there is so much evidence that's starting to come out about the impact that exercise has there. We know that a daily brisk walk of 25 minutes can reduce Alzheimer's risk by 40%. Drugs just can't compare to these numbers. Resistance training 2 to 3 times per week for 6 months can decrease risk by 47%. Can you give us some thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, and you think of that, like those stats are mind-blowing already. And then you add on like the social connection piece, right? Which social isolation is a huge risk factor for Alzheimer's disease or cognitive impairment, that you can stack a lot of benefits to kind of hedge against that diagnosis or hedge against cognitive decline. But I would add to that as well, another risk factor is a negative age stereotype. If I have a negative perception of aging, if I have kind of a doom and gloom mindset, I can only see the bad that is ahead. Think of the decisions and the lifestyle behaviors that contributes to, that's ultimately going to increase risk for Alzheimer's. There's a really interesting study that looked at positive age stereotypes and negative age stereotypes. Those individuals that were categorized by taking a quiz, all of them had the APOE4 genetic mutation that elevates your risk for Alzheimer's disease by around 50%, I believe, compared to others. And they followed these folks for 20 years and tracked the rate of diagnoses of Alzheimer's disease. And the folks that had that positive age stereotype were 40% less likely to actually get the diagnosis. Becca Levy is the one that did this research. She's a huge researcher in kind of the whole age stereotype world and how that influences health outcomes. But that tells me, like, if I perceive aging a little differently, a little more positively, to see like I can improve, I can get better, there is good things ahead of me, that's going to influence my decisions and the lifestyle that I'm going to lead, that's going to have these health benefits. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, in the context of a group setting, when you're working out with people just like you that are pushing their limits, that are trying to be the best version of themselves, like that just breeds that positive age stereotype. So you're getting that positive age stereotype, you're getting the social interactions, you're getting the exercise that's really going to hedge your bets against cognitive decline.
Yeah, that's great. And that might be a better motivator for some people than thinking about the physical side, because thinking about losing your memory and losing your cognition is a scary thing. So if that's what motivates you to get up and get moving, go ahead and take it.
Yeah.
I think what people want to hear is you need to do these 10 exercises to maintain your balance, maintain your strength, and cardiovascular fitness. What I feel like I'm hearing from you is that doesn't exist. There's no just set kind of number of exercises that you have to do, that really you need a lot of variety, and it's very individual. Am I hearing that right?
I would say, depending on the person, like if I'm an individual that hasn't had a lot of surgeries, for example, or a lot of major injuries to like knees, shoulders, hips, back, like if I don't have a lot of limitations and I kind of have a clean slate, if you will, I do think we can be pretty generic in giving a 10 exercise program. right? Like I think that's going to be
Okay.
very effective for folks. But the 10 exercises I would recommend are probably very different than what a lot of people would think. Like, and it probably look more like what you would have a high schooler do than than an older adult.
A takeaway for our listeners, if you had to give 3 recommendations for staying active and healthy after the age of 55, what would those top 3? I know it's hard to pick 3, but what would the top 3 be?
Get out of breath every day. I don't care how long it is, but just that rhythm, maybe not every single day, at least 5 days a week, that I'm doing something strenuous, that I'm getting out of breath, whatever it is. Like the consistency, I think, is huge. The next one is you need to lift relatively heavy things at a minimum of 2 times a week, like you all have mentioned. And that's a minimum. We have folks that can do more, but starting out a minimum. And then the third one is, I'd say, do it with people. Like, build that social piece in. There's so many added benefits to that beyond the physical that can make it more fun and make it more sustainable. And most people need some accountability. They need some folks to do it with, and it makes it way more enjoyable.
Yeah. And so there's probably multiple options. Obviously, Stronger Life.
We love talking to folks first. So if you're like, man, I really want to try exercise and maybe try a group class at Stronger Life, we always get on the phone, ask some questions like your medical history, get a good idea of your goals, and then make sure you're very clear on what the program is. And then folks come and try a free class and see if they enjoy it and if it is something they want to be a consistent part of their life. Yeah, I'd love for folks to reach out, strongerlifehq.com, or you can call or text our number that's 859-334-0780.
Are there other opportunities that come to mind for you that people could look into to have that support?
The biggest predictor of someone sticking with an exercise program is proximity. So I would look there first. What's the closest thing to you? It may be your garage. It may be the Y. So like, what's the closest? But I think like a Silver Sneakers can be great. Whatever it is that's close that you enjoy, just make sure it's not too easy. That's my only critique of a lot of programs that are available to, the 65 plus demographic. So yeah, I'd say proximity. I really value that to make it easy, like reduce the barriers.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So maybe even just looking for something near you, something you can be consistent with, get that down first and get it down to where you're not hurting yourself, and then start pushing yourself more. Because I think what I keep hearing from you today is push it. You can do more. You can lift more.
Yes.
You can move faster. Keep pushing yourself to do those things, and don't just keep doing the same thing month after month after year.
It's so easy to get into that rhythm, especially in like physical therapy. I'll work with folks like, yeah, I've got my home exercise program that my physical therapist gave me 2 years ago, and they're doing the same exercises, same sets, same reps, same resistance. And I was like, that was great for you 2 years ago, but now that's not doing much for you at all. Like, you can keep doing the same exercise, but maybe bump the weight up, maybe do more reps, for example, to make it challenging.
Well, this has been very, very helpful. And I do want to kind of restate those last 3 things that you said, because I think that summarizes it very well, which is get out of breath every day, lift heavy at least twice a week, and do it with people. I think that's a great way to end things for us. So thank you so much for coming on the show with us today. Hopefully this will help you as you start setting your own plans and goals for the new year, which will hopefully include some physical activity. So this week's goal is going to be every day for you to do 1-minute body exercise challenges. So for 1 minute, you may do push-ups or 1 minute of planks or lunges or squats or marching in place. You could go as far as being able to do 1 minute of burpees or mountain climbers. And we want you to do 5 of those throughout the day. So you're going to get 5 total minutes of these 1 minute bursts of exercise, and just kind of see how you can work those 1 minute times in throughout your day. And that'll help you as you go forward, just get more used to maximizing your time. Even short bits of exercise really matter. Again, if you want to know more about the 12-week habit challenge, go ahead and head on over to betterhealthlibrary.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify and share this with anyone else you think that could benefit.